Hi, I'm my personal writing coach, and this is a quick fix. Today's topic, we will be focusing on how to write a formal essay. We are going to break that down into chunks because this is a formidable task. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to write an introduction. Before we really talk too heavily on what an introduction is, I want you to be aware of the scope of what is going to be asked of you. All papers, no matter if it's a short essay or a long thesis paper for your senior final or your doctoral thesis, will follow the same basic format. You will have an introduction and a conclusion, and sandwiched between those two are going to be your main points. And the main points will be dictated on really how long your paper is. But our focus here is just really concentrating on how to get that introduction done. So the first step is deciding what the focus of your paper is going to be. What are you going to talk about? Once you get that that main idea, you want to start thinking in a broader scope, widening it, like you're looking at it from the top down and seeing it in its fullness and its wholeness. And here it says an introduction starts with a broad statement. That's what that bubble effect is. And I actually do think about what I'm talking about. Right here I have my electronic storage device. And if I'm looking at it on my desk, I'm going to think in a broader term of an old office with many file cabinets, something that is bigger than what I'm going to be focusing on. And each step of that thesis, or that introduction, excuse me, is going to narrow it down to the thesis. If I was going to be talking about the electronic changes in how we store information, that would be a natural progression. It wasn't too long ago that offices were filled with many file cabinets. Throughout the era of electronics, the file cabinet is being replaced by electronic digital file holders. So you can kind of see that idea of going from a broad to a narrow. Let's look at some examples of how to do this. I truly think of a funnel when I'm thinking about my introduction with this storage container. I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I want to go bigger than that. This is just a small little box sitting on my desk. What used to hold information? File cabinets. If I'm going to talk about Napoleon, I might think about generals in generals in general, good, bad, good and bad generals. You just want to think bigger than your topic. And each idea is going to draw narrower and narrower until you get to your thesis. Some of my students like the idea of more specific. They get confused with this broad to narrow, but think about least specific to most specific idea. The idea is that you are starting cold with your reader, and your reader wants to know what you're going to talk about, but they need to be led gently into the idea. So here's a basic introduction. We're leading into talking about Winnie the Pooh and how his stories were made. So if we're thinking about, if you looked to the bottom of that triangle, my main idea is going to be Winnie the Pooh was modeled after his son's toy. So thinking in a broader, thinking like a God's view, looking down at A.A. Milne as he's creating this childhood classic. And you're looking at his children playing with stuffed animals and children in general loving animals. So you can see that idea broadening out from least specific, children love animals. I'm going to see if I can get both fingers in here. Least specific, children love animals. Children love stuffed animals. A.A. Milne's son had a stuffed bear. Well, Winnie the Pooh was modeled after his son's toy. You can, if you're visual like I am, you can think about you leading your reader by the hand and you're walking them step by step by step. So this idea would be fulfilled in a paragraph. So most children love animals. This is one of the reasons that stuffed animals are such a favorite among preschoolers. The young son of author A.A. Milne was so fond of a cub at the zoo that he named his stuffed animal after it. Milne used his son's affection towards the stuffed animal as inspiration for his creation of the now famous stories called Winnie the Pooh. So the basic skeleton of an idea pumped out into smooth sentences, guiding the reader. animals to stuffed animals, introducing the idea of A. A. Milne's son, A. A. Milne writing with Winnie the Pooh. Okay, and that last sentence is what's called a thesis. Your paper will sink or swim on the thesis. I cannot overemphasize how important that thesis statement is. We'll go into basics of what a thesis is, but just kind of notice here that this is the claim we're setting forth, that Milne used his son's affection towards the stuffed animal as inspiration. Inspiration is the claim. We are claiming that he modeled Winnie the Pooh after his son's infatuation with this one particular stuffed animal. That is what every single paragraph in this whole paper is going to discuss. It's not going to talk about conservation efforts of bears. It's not going to talk about poaching. It's going to talk about his son's relationship with animals that created this fantasy world for so many children. So let's think about how to do a thesis statement. Thesis statements, rules. One and only one sentence. It can be short, it can be long as it's punctuated correctly, and there's punctuation podcasts that you can go watch to learn how to do that. One sentence. It is never a question. It is always a statement. It's not just stating a fact, it's stating a claim. You are proposing an idea that you will prove. I'm not going to write a whole paper on George Washington was the first president of the United States. I could say George Washington set the stage for future presidents as being the first president of the United States. Give me some meat that is going to be chewed on. So that's what that last one is a good thesis makes a claim that will be proved within the statement. Just remember those basic things and you will be good to go. Let's see. So, repeating myself because it happens all the time. A thesis, one sentence, no more and no less. It is always the last sentence in the introduction. The only time that will not be true is if you are writing a paper that has chapters, and I'm imagining that's a very long way away for you. Think of the thesis as the guiding statement of your entire paper. And remember, if you don't have a thesis, you don't have a paper. You don't have a thesis, you don't have direction. You don't have a thesis, your paper will automatically go nowhere. And if it's being graded by a college professor, you will have an F. So really, it is the most important sentence. Don't wimp out on it. Don't ignore it. It has to be there. It should be absolutely the first sentence you do. All right, so let's look. We saw a good example of an introduction. This is a poor example. Most children love animals. This is one of the reasons that stuffed animals are such a favorite among preschoolers. A. A. Milne used a bear for the creation of the now famous stories called Winnie the Pooh. Notice the awkwardness of it. Children love animals. This is the reason that stuffed animals are such a favorite. All of a sudden, we've got this guy, A. A. Milne, using a bear. It's just like, where did he come from? He came from out of nowhere. So if you're thinking about that triangle, it's disjointed. As you're starting to learn how to write introductions, you may want to write your outline of your introduction and see if it flows. All right, we're going to do one more real quick. I know this is a little bit longer of a podcast than we're used to, but this is so vitally important. It deserves 10 minutes. Formal examples, epic journeys, the classical standards of the epic pattern, and then my thesis is going to be Janie is a feminist, not an feminist. That is wrong. Let's change that right away. Sorry about that. Janie is a feminist, independent Black hero. This is a paper that I wrote in college on Their Eyes Were Watching God by Nora Zeal Hurston. Ended up being one of my favorite authors, so kind of bear with me on this one. All right, here's my introduction. An epic journey is usually a story based on a legendary male hero. Remember, I want to talk about her being a hero, so I went broad. Who are usually in society the main heroes? They're usually men. They're usually people like Beowulf and Achilles, when you think of big guy heroes. Classical heroes such as the Greek Odysseus or the Anglo-Saxon Beowulf are the standard heroes are classified by. Traditionally, these epic journeys follow a prescribed pattern. It could be argued, here's my thesis, that Zora Neale Hurston uses inspiration from her own life to pattern Janie, her female protagonist from her book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, as a feminist hero on a heroic journey which strengthens her into an independent Black woman during an era where there were very few Black women heroes. So that is my sample introduction, starting broad. We're starting with the idea of heroes, usually men heroes, the classical idea of what heroes were defined by, introducing the idea of epic journeys, and then joining it all together that we're now having a female hero on an epic journey fighting stereotypes. Okay. If you need more help, give me a contact, mypersonalwritingcoach.com. I wish you the best of luck. One final word on introductions. Don't panic about writing it first. You must write your thesis statement first, but many, many good writers do their introductions last, and that is completely okay. Have a great day.